So what I really want to do, as many of you think about your topic, what I want to spend some time today is I wanted to talk about an approach that I use. And we've covered a bit, some of you, we've kind of done this without really making it explicit and formal, to help you kind of, this is a project, a convergence of streams approach to really hone in on the sweet spot of your topic. And we've kind of we've talked around this, but I just want to share with you kind of the vision. Some of us have talked about how it works in selecting a topic and in balancing these trade-offs. So the first fundamental thing, and you can already anticipate where this is going, we're going to have some big Venn diagrams, is the first thing you've really got to make sure you have is a passion for your topic. And I know some of you who are in a real long slog and you're going to get worn down, beaten down by your topic. It's really difficult. You need to have this passion. It is an essential criterion. If you're not excited to get it out of the bed and work on your topic, you're just not going to see it through. And I know Matt, Cynthia, you're towards the later stages of your PhD. That's definitely true. We need to make sure that fire's there and stays there. The second big thing that we really want to make sure we tap into is we want to marry this passion with a big debate. And I think this is one area that is really key. Because if there's no debate going on in your field, you're going to have a tough time on the job market. You're going to have a tough time getting attention from people in the field. You're going to have a tough time getting citations, getting your H index up, the kind of indicators you're going to need to get prominent in the field. You're going to have a tough time getting invited to conferences, getting people to really value your work. And you'll notice a lot of the tweaks that we'll be making to your papers and your areas are really to try to, how can we tap into a bigger debate? Maybe sometimes even, Matt, we went through in this with your topic and said, how could we frame this in a way that captures a bigger debate than maybe we were tapping into otherwise? And you'll see this also with Yushi. A lot of even this convergence process here is even doing this in your papers, even same topic. You can do subtle massages to the framing to get you a bigger debate, get you a bigger audience, get you bigger impact, get you bigger citations. So you want to keep aware of that, but you don't want to sacrifice your passion in doing it. The other major constraint that we've got to play with in our field is we kind of foreshadowed this from Cynthia, is feasibility. And feasibility is huge. And in this case, that feasibility takes a number of forms. We don't often think about the feasibility that Cynthia did, but you very well can have political constraints. I mean, one of the great things about being a tenured full professor is I don't have to worry about that kind of feasibility, thankfully. And I'm very grateful for that. One of the great joys of being an academic is that freedom, is that power to take on thorny issues that other people might want to stay away from. So feasibility is really going to be important, but that feasibility for many of you is also going to be timing. And I'm thinking of you here, Susan, especially because you want to have things that you can get done in a defined period of time. So we really need to make sure, as you're trying to get papers out, for example, with Matt, as we were going through our roadmap, we were thinking, okay, what papers can we get out in a specific period of time that's going to really help Matt on the job market? Now, we've got some papers that are really in the sweet spot that with Matt, I think we can think of that are awesome. You're passionate and you're on the debate on them, but that they're just not going to be feasible in the time to get the things done you need to get done for going on the job market. So that one we had to rule out. And we even had one too, where we were very interested. You'll remember with Matt, we did an editing session with Lydia Ann in one of the last Facebook group sessions where we looked at austerity and the impact on the COVID epidemic in Brazil. That was actually a case in point. That was in the space here, but it wasn't so much that it was feasible, but it was actually it was not feasible for a different reason because Matt had some competing priorities. And this is another aspect of feasibility that we don't often think about. But there were some other things that, this would take away from optimizing the one of that some of the papers that were really just a higher priority of value for us to focus on. Matt, is that fair to say that we kick some out on your side because of feasibility constraints?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially, you always have to consider those things when you're trying to get things out, I guess. There's always so many competing demands, and being more effective on the ones that you have that can be the highest impact, I guess, should be the priority.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to just add on this feasibility side is that sometimes there are some nudges that can take something that might not be so feasible, that might be, just out here outside feasibility, and draw that into the sweet spot to make it more feasible. How could you do that? Well, maybe, so what would that apply to the case with Matt? So working with Lady Anne would probably take a lot of work for Matt, but maybe there's a kind of lighter gloves way Matt could be involved that wouldn't be so pressing on your time or mental energy. Or, for example, to take an example from Cornelia. Cornelia was first starting with a topic that was defining scope, social capital and dental health, and it was way too big. But when we made some exclusion restrictions, we were able to push it. Cornelia's were also able to push in the feasible space by getting things down to a manageable level. And so that feasibility can also come into, maybe you have a topic that's really close, is on the borders, and maybe just a few light touch tweaks, you can get it there. So, Muhammad's is right now, I know, Muhammad, you've been feeling yours is just not feasible because you're not finding enough papers, but we're going to make some tweaks that we're going to see if we can kind of bring that into the land of feasibility, because we know it's right. And so often we'll find people, I think for most of you, where most of you end up getting stuck is you've got topics you're identifying where you're passionate, you've got the debate, but there is some dimension. This is my terrible scribble. Sorry, guys. But most of you are getting stuck in this land. I would venture to say applies to the majority of you. And we're trying to get things to be more feasible. And unfortunately, sometimes that means moving away from the big debate or some of your passions for these pragmatic reasons. I hope this is all clear. Susan, I just want to talk about your topics for a second. Susan, you've got a few ideas. Just looking at this map of passion, debate, and feasibility, I want to kind of imagine like you're playing darts and you're throwing these topics on the board with arrows. Susan, are you there with us still? Okay, Susan might have stepped away.
Yeah, I'm coming. Sorry, I'm here. Why? Were you asking?
Okay. Well, I want to take yours because Susan, one of the amazing things about Susan is Susan has no shortage of ideas. And I love this about Susan because one of my favorite chemists when I was doing, you don't even know
the half of them.
Yeah. One of my favorite chemists, Linus Pauling, said to have a great, and he was multiple time Nobel Prize winner. He said to have a great idea, you have to have many ideas. And Susan has a ton of ideas. So Susan, what I wanted to do was I want to take some of your ideas and just kind of ping them. Imagine you're playing darts here with this whiteboard. Looking at these three dimensions, where would your ideas land on this map?
Okay. You just want me to go through my different ideas?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with one. So I have an interest in, would you like me to talk from a matter of systematic reviews or just?
Yeah, I think we were looking to start with a systematic review.
Okay, so one idea is a systematic review looking at technology acceptance models for health. That's one.
Okay, so where do you think that would land right now?
I think that actually lands for passion, like good. For debate, actually, I'm not sure, because the thing about debate, people keep just using and not realizing that it's not being done in an intelligent way. Sorry, intelligent, the right word. It's not comprehensive. So people just keep using models and they don't think about whether the model they're using is necessarily the best. They're like, so there are two models that people use the most in health. One is called TAM and the other one is called UTAUT2. And then they add variables to those. But they don't look systematically to say like, okay, what is really the best for this situation? Yeah. So there is not a lot of debate. So I would say it's feasible and passion, but there's not a lot of debate, but it's a big need in my opinion, based on my reading. I would put this here. So ideally what you do is you score your many ideas on dimensions and optimize. But just for the sake of having something visual, I've set it up this way. But yeah, I think that idea is probably in this space. I would rate it a little bit weaker on feasibility because technology acceptance is pretty vast and broad.
Okay, so that's this one. I'm just going to call this, I put an X, but I'm going to redo this and put a T. We're just going to imagine this is a TA. Okay. Fire another idea.
Okay, so another one related is I was thinking of doing a systematic review of reviews on interventions in physical activity. So sorry, digital health interventions in physical activity. And sorry, the reason why I'm thinking of doing a systematic review of reviews is because there's a lot of literature on that area. So maybe I could not, maybe I could just not do a systematic review of reviews, just do a review. But there's a lot of publications, and it's not clear to me what is the space where one of my big interests is physical activity interventions using things like social, maybe we can also narrow it. So there's social media, there are wearables, there is mobile apps. So I was thinking big. So it could even narrow it down to just one area.
That's really good, Susan. So I want all of you to kind of jump in. So I think that is a space to me. I know you're passionate about it because I know, and I really like this about you. I watch your deadlift form on your Facebook.
Exactly. I'm into fitness personally. I've lost 40 pounds and kept it off for 6 years. So this is my personal level, intellectual area. This is me.
If we could rate this on passion, this is like top of the chart on passion. So, I mean, this Venn diagram doesn't do justice. I mean, before you said passion was good, this passion is very high. But I still think, I mean, guys, jump in with me here. Hearing Susan here, just kind of your sense, where would that score? I mean, you've already mentioned feasibility as it's set up is a little low, but what about debate? Where would you guys say that that's ending up on debate? Just, knowing what you know. And sometimes I like this on debate because even if you're not in the field, you sometimes know if you're doing something high impact, often people even outside your field, but who are educated will be aware of this big area and this big debate going on. So guys, I want you to like jump in and say, what do you think about this debate Susan's tapping into?
I think the debate is there related to physical activity because in my area, I think mostly it's about the spillover effect. Like after work, what can I do? So there is always these questions like, is physical activity better than this, better than that? So the debate is there.
Okay. So Cynthia, you're seeing a debate. Is there, especially thinking through the lens of organizational management, sociology?
Because of the spillover, like
now that is a very interesting extension, though, Cynthia. I just want to write that down because
there's actually literature on that. Looking at it in organizations.
Yeah, exactly. That
so there is literature on that. So there's literature in schools, in workplaces. But people also look at it in the environment. So workplaces, schools, neighborhoods. Literature is all over the map. This is a really wide topic.
But this is already it's helpful to bring this up, Cynthia, because this is already a narrowing restriction. If you went that route, that would give you some more feasibility. But I want to ask, Cornelia, perspective as a dentist, Mohammed, perspective in bigger public health. Where do you guys see, if you see, do you see that? How would you score this? If you're going to score this debate on a scale of 1 to 10, where a debate on 10 is like, we need to be having this conversation now. And a debate of 1 is like, well, we could talk about this in a couple of years' time. That's okay too. Where would you score this? You're not going to offend Susan. I know you have thick skin, so you're not going to get offended.
I'm good. I'm good.
Salma, good to have you join us.
Hi, Susan. Hi, David.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry for the delay. I was.
Don't worry. Don't worry. It's recording, so it can always catch back up. We're talking about a method that we've all been using to hone in on a good topic. And Salma is helpful. You've gone through this, and some of you may use this kind of framework. You might not have done it ever so explicitly, but many of you are going to go on to build your own research teams. And this is also, I want to also equip you with tools that one day you'll be able to use to also help the next generation of leaders in the field hone in on their sweet spots and do really high impact work. So, okay, guys, okay, I'm putting you on the spot, and Susan is not going to be very happy with you, but I'm just going to go out there, and I think this debate is currently as it is before we've made tweaks. Digital interventions and physical health, I would say, is about I would put it as a 4. Don't kill me, Susan.
No, I'm not going to kill you. So even the fact that we're in COVID and people are not moving, it's not important. Anyway, but it may be not what people are thinking about. So it may not be a debate that people are worried about. I'm personally worried because literally. So can I go to my next topic?
No. I want to continue with this because I think there's.
Okay. You want to continue?
But I want to put some others of you on the spot. Mohammed, jump in. I want to know what you guys think about this debate.
Actually, you've biased my scoring. So whatever it is, Susan, take it with a tinge of salt.
I'm good. Whatever you think.
Yes, I was actually going to say a 6 because it would have been an 8 had it been we weren't in the midst of COVID and the sort of COVIDization of research. So it's not a big debate as if it would have been, let's say, if it was a pre-COVID era. That's one. However.
Okay, hang on. Sorry, Mohammed, to cut you off. I just want to jot that down because we've had 2 ideas to extend the topic to amplify the debate. So we know COVID and lockdowns have really people's physical activity have suffered. I was actually working on somebody with a group who's been doing surveys of children's physical activity during a time of COVID. But imagine if we put COVID and children's physical activity and digital interventions, I'd say this is starting to get. That's looking. I agree. That's an 8, Mohammed.
Maybe I should tell you my actual interest in the intervention right now. So maybe go there. So I'm actually interested in doing an intervention now, meaning in the next year, of actually seeing if university students could be part of an intervention to help their family members, like especially the ones who live nearby them, so it would be their parents or grandparents, to actually do more activity. And I'm thinking of 2 very simple things, something called dancing. And I was thinking of like jumping on the current, it's still there, the current global dance viral video that was started by that South African dancer. So I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be super cool? So I don't know, I can't believe I'm actually telling you guys this on record. Wouldn't it be super cool if Jamaica, and anybody really, would actually start a viral movement to increase public health, physical activity of people using university students and their families? And I mean, how would anybody right now not be motivated to like, and then of course you give them prizes. So I'm thinking of doing an intervention, but this is not the study. We're talking about systematic review.
Susan, it's a very cool idea. That is a massive project that's going to take you to do properly at least a year or 2. So that one, I'm going to be really mean, and I'm definitely that one's a huge passion, but we're striking out.
Oh yes, I know that would not be no, but that would be low on feasibility.
Okay.
But it would have lots of value.
But I like having the dream in the background because sometimes you might have a big dream, but you're going to need funding to do it and resource, and you need to take steps to build up to that big dream project. But Mohammed, I want to make sure we finish capturing your thought here because I cut you off there, and then we got to hear about Susan's dream. Yeah.
Okay, actually, I'm back. So it would have been an 8, but. The only way to draw it back to that ranking or to that score is if you could find a way to link it to the COVID pandemic, and I think this is currently what David is talking about now.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mohammed. That's really helpful. So I think we've got a few things that we can do here. I also think there's an area too in refining this topic that there's interest in using, and this is Tyrone's area, artificial intelligence in this space. And I think that kind of helps too, because people have some general fears about artificial intelligence being used in the health domain. So I think there's some interest there, artificial intelligence and physical interventions. So you can also bring this in, and I think Mohammed's pointed to your strategy to amplify, help you get more in this sweet spot of the debate by kind of doing things to tap into other kind of corollary or connected debates. So here's an example. Here's a connected debate you're connecting it to. Workplace is one you're connecting it to. COVID, children's physical activity. You can connect your area of passion, which is physical activity, to other things. Some people have done it on climate change. So you saw AJ is doing a topic looking at because some climate change mental health connections. Climate change physical activity is also an area that would help you amplify why do you need to have this conversation now that you're looking at.
Isn't there I was just going to comment from
subsets.
Hang on, Susan. I want to bring in Matt here because Matt has some.
Like I remember reading. I mark a lot of student papers, but I remember a paper regarding the efficacy of digital interventions. Like there was a revolution in sports fitness, right? When we got the Fitbit, the Apple Watch, etc. Is that it's my understanding is that the all the studies focusing on the efficacy of digital interventions show that they might be not as effective, period, as just like other types of interventions regarding physical health. So I don't know. In the debate, it seems like I've seen a few papers that kind of demonstrate that digital interventions might not be the way to go. I'm not sure what specific environment it was, but it seemed that they were not as effective as working out with peers or other types of kind of.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So that kind of taps into Cornelia's social capital stuff, like that. Maybe there's something to think about in this discussion, and you can frame it as more of a question. Do digital health interventions fail physical activity or something, or fail to bring the benefits? And maybe the missing link is they lack social capital or something like that, or the social network to really bring them to life or make them real to people. But then you're going in and it's a little bit more because there's a hypothesis there in the background. And I always think the research gets you into a debate. I always like when you go into systematic review and I'm drawing back, like you've got a hypothesis in here, a clear hypothesis and I'm trying to get a different color to scribble again. When you have a clear hypothesis, you're more getting in the sweet spot of a debate. I really like that. Matt, is this staying true to your suggestion?
Yeah, well, that's right along the lines. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, the social capital, I think I like that because that's already in my mind. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, no, I missed that, Susan.
I said the social capital is already in my mind. So that's why I was talking about children and their families. I've done stuff on diabetes, and clearly the connection between people would be an important part, in my opinion, of having digital health interventions work. So that's certainly something worth exploring.
So exactly. So this would be different because you would be saying your DAG for this would be a little bit different. So before, if you were looking at, okay, let's just review how digital interventions impact on physical activity, right? This would be kind of your bog standard systematic review. And you said there's a lot here, but you would do something different. And you would say, okay, let's look now and say, did those digital interventions have something to also boost social capital or create a social network with it? And would you see that some interventions were more or less successful depending on the way they engaged social support or some dimension of social capital? And I suspect your hypothesis would be that these are only successful, or they're much more successful when they provide that kind of community support behind it.
Right. But one of the gaps is that there isn't much studies that are long term. But even the ones that are, from what I remember, the ones that are sort of long term, people tend to peter out. So my hypothesis is that people, if they're connected to other people, will want to stay connected with the intervention, because basically if you either play games or you feel, feel either support or feel closer to somebody, you're left to want to continue.
Susan, I don't know if you guys caught that. I was having a little bit of trouble hearing all of that. But I think what you're saying is that they kind of, the digital interventions to varying degrees feature it in? I'm not sure I'm understanding you.
And you hear?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Sort of, but you're kind of far away. But okay, but I think this is just, I wanted to illustrate this really, Susan, picking on you a little bit, because I know you're happy to share on these topics. We've got a couple of people raising hands. I think we've got Rehab and Cynthia both want to jump in here. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I feel I have like a gap here. So when we discuss or judge a topic or a debate to be like a topic of a strong debate, what kind of aspects do we keep in mind? Is there a checklist, for example, of items? The first things that came to my mind is that it would be a strong debate if it will discover an area that has never been discussed before, or maybe it's era related, for example, with the COVID at the meantime.
So that's, yeah.
Or of a potential significance in the future. This is how I visualize a topic to be a strong debate. So am I missing something to truly or have an authentic judgment on a topic?
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. How do you know when there's a debate? And you gave one example of, say, look at something that's never been looked at before. That might work, but sometimes you can be really doing something risky by wading into a completely new area that's so novel that there's no debate there yet. And it's almost like it's like if you are throwing a seed on soil that's really dry, it's not going to grow into a plant. You need to cast that seed on fertile soil for it to grow. And that fertile soil is where there's a debate. And so coming back to your question, how do you know there's a debate? Well, the simplest way I think to know that there's a debate is, let me share the other screen, and I'm going to do this 2-step screen share to make sure it works. The simplest way I think to know that there's a debate is your friend Google Scholar. So, generally, I think you'll get an impulse. For me, now this is it might seem strange as a researcher. We sometimes pride ourselves on being kind of stoic and kind of having this emotionless view of the world. But really, when there's a debate, you almost feel this tug, like you just kind of get a gut feeling that this is important. Like when we talk about COVID and children's physical activity, I had this gut feeling like this is important. And I can see there's a debate because there's a lot of citations in it. So it's just kind of the clear evidence of it.
People have been talking about this as I couldn't understand my research before. Like people are writing about this, like mental health and physical activity. There's so much articles.
Exactly. So exactly.
Even in newspapers, it's a debate. So I don't understand why you get it when it's a debate or that's important. It's both a debate and important.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one view. So you can come here, and I'm just trying to get a checklist here. So one way is if you do this Google Scholar search, you can see it as being discussed. That discussion could be in journals and topics that are important. That discussion could also be in newspapers, as Susan points out, in the popular press. And I actually would not discount this at all. But sometimes there's great potential. A debate that is being talked about in newspapers, I would say, for example, on artificial intelligence and education, one thing we discovered with Tyrone is talked about in policy circles. It's talked about in newspapers, not talked enough about in the research. And there's often a big disconnect between what researchers are taking on and what the world, the conversation the world is having. When you see that disconnect, sometimes that can be a great opportunity for you. Rehab, I think in particular, your topic, I'm just going to share this with everybody. And Cynthia, I know you got a question coming. So Cynthia's topic, guys, I wanted you to try to score this for us. Not Cynthia's, Rehab's topic, sorry, is on early warning systems, like using digital social media to detect infectious disease outbreaks. How would you guys score that on level of debate?
Could you repeat?
So I'll write it. So she's going to review what we know about early warning systems to predict or detect infectious disease outbreaks.
like a good topic to me. I would rate it, given what's happening right now, 9 out of 10.
Yeah. What would you say, Mohammed? Because I know you work in the military and health security. Where would you score that?
Actually, I typed a 10. It's a 10.
10. It's
Wow.
10. Matt, what would you score that coming from social science?
At least a 9 or a 10 for sure.
9 or 10. Rehab, I tell you, you're in a great space. And that's the thing. I want all of you guys to get in. You don't have to jump on a bandwagon of say, I'm going to do COVID. You don't have to jump on a bandwagon. I mean, this is not COVID, but obviously it's a conversation we're having now. But I do want you guys to try to get a very high debate score, if possible, for the topic you're taking on. If that makes sense. So Rehab, I hope that helps. Susan gave a nice criterion, you step ahead of me, and Google Scholar gives you some tools to help you know objectively when there's a debate. Okay, Cynthia, please. I've been keeping you waiting for too long.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yep.
No, I was just wondering how she came up with this population of university students, because at that age already people are very active, very young.
No, that's not what the literature says.
So I'd be interested.
Females university students are not active, and actually, in general, the science shows that male university students males are more active across the whole globe than females, but in particular, from about 15, females stop being active. So you're not up with the literature of what's happening in the real world. So in the real world, females basically they get afraid of looking whatever, and they stop being active. So females are very inactive, and probably because of that tend to be more obese. The literature is there, so it's.
Okay, but Susan, hang on a second. I do think, Cynthia, look, because you're saying, oh well, people think that university students are active, and you're saying, well, hang on, wait a second, that may be what you think, but the data shows something else. And when you get that disconnect between what people or ordinary people think, I'm like you, Cynthia. I would have thought university students are more active. I know in the US, people are choosing their university based on how nice the gym is. And this is really common. Ooh, there's hotel-like gym facilities. I'm going to go there. But if you have something that if you have an interesting fact like that defies conventional wisdom, like Cynthia, I really thought like you here, you may not even be aware of that. You might be starting from an assumption that's out of sync with what other people might think. But that's actually really important to establish. And sometimes I do see this with some students that your starting point is ahead of where people think the data is or where they know. And you can risk your seed falling on that dry soil because people just aren't there with you in the conversation because they have a misguided belief. And Matt, I know for you in social science, this can be particularly problematic when you want to do something that's real world impact, but the state of the field is like back in the 1970s or something. So Susan, I would Susan, just to cap, I would really, really, really take that to heart because you might have an opportunity to do a really quick punchy paper saying, there is this myth that the myth of physically active university students. And, right now we know university students, about 1 in 2 are suffering from anxiety and depression, the highest quantity of mental health problems we've seen ever in university students. And I'm sure physical activity is part of that. So I think there's an interesting conversation there.
Right. So I was going to say, I would go even further. There is this disconnect across the globe that government should spend money on non-communicable diseases as well as prevention, as in health and lifestyle. And people just don't rate it as important. And I'm hoping that if with this COVID debate, maybe if I do this research, we can say, we all know now, it's all in the news, that we need to be active, we need to be reducing our comorbidities, and then therefore the system of review, everybody will pay attention because my God, every government in the world needs to spend money to promote healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. And Susan, there's definitely a conversation there too, And I think this is helpful because we gravitate towards identifying, additional conversations. There's a conversation about the long-term consequences of COVID, not just directly from COVID, but from what is done to our lifestyles. And certainly that is one of the reasons I like this COVID children's physical activity, because, we're breeding or generating a generation of inactive children. That's a danger and that's a concern. And the habits that you form in childhood carry on into adulthood. So, we've gone a lot, Susan, on the topic, and you and I are going to continue this in more detail. I picked on you a bit today. And so thanks for being willing to share with us, because we had a snafu in scheduling the roadmap session. And it happens. The time we're all we're all in different countries here, working across different time zones. So it's easy to jumble. But I wanted to already get this out there. And I thought this was an instructive point for several of you. Rehab, I think this helps allay some of your concerns that your topic is good, because we're mutually supporting each other here. I think you have a standout topic. And all of you can kind of stress test your topic. I want all of you to be able to throw your topic against this dartboard and see where it is. And, Matt, I'm going to come back and pick on you for a second. The first paper we're focusing on, being very self-critical. Where would you say that lands on the map?
I would say, I guess because it is generally social policy and mental health, I guess it would land somewhere closer to the sweet spot of a debate of whether or not social policy affects mental health. So I think passion, feasibility, it might be, I'd say it's pretty close to the sweet spot. I don't know.
No, I think it's in the sweet spot. And one thing I want to clarify, I've given you 2 dimensions to think about this, right? If you could score, right, a passion score that goes from 1 to 10 somewhere, and you might do the same for feasibility, 1 to 10, same kind of thing, and debate the same. You kind of want to, you might have multiple that you feel if all these are greater than say 6 or 7, you're probably in the sweet spot. I say if they're greater than 6, you're in the sweet spot. But obviously, if you could hit all these scores and be an 8, right? Imagine if this map then is this is 2-dimensional. The third dimension, if we had the magnitude, imagine this plot going in the sky or having some depth. Then you would kind of want to look at the highest on this convergent sweet spot mountain we're creating. If you guys can kind of visualize that, there's an extra mention I can't really plot here. But yeah, I think, Matt, yours is definitely, I would rate objectively as the debate on that as a 7. But I think the feasibility is very high. And I know your passion is pretty high, around an 8 on that. So it's a really nice one to get on with.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, more questions or thoughts about this. I mean, Cynthia, I think of you because I really, my concern with you that I've shared with you is that because of the constraints from some of the Chinese academics, they're forcing us to go somewhere where the debate is not high. And, I often find my passion and the debate are really closely linked. But we're going to optimize that, Cynthia. So we're close now. But I think that's the biggest challenge I see for you. For Mohammed, I see the biggest challenge right now is feasibility. Salma, Rehab, Matt, I think you're all in a great spot, exactly where you want to be. Cornelia, you're exactly where you want to be as well.
Just one thing for Cynthia is that I know there's an emerging literature on workplaces and fairness in the perceptions of fairness in the workplace as well. That's kind of not as politically sensitive, and I think equal pay, equal stuff like that. I believe that's kind of the newer area in that where you can fold quite a bit of research questions under the idea of fairness. And I think advisors wouldn't be as sensitive to that topic, I guess, in China.
Cynthia, any quick thoughts on that? That's an interesting one. I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, because it still falls under mistreatment because we call it injustices, unfairness, injustices. So they are all under mistreatment, but now from different sources. So the source can be organization, supervisor, employee, or customer. So it's all there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's also a way, if you write large mistreatment, it might come in there. So yeah, there's still some optimization, Cynthia, on yours around, you look at just China, do you look at East Asia, do you look at the whole world, do you narrow it to colleague mistreatment, customer mistreatment, employer mistreatment, and that kind of optimization. I think some of that optimization will come from really the two things, because all those will kind of be equally feasible at that stage. But I think in those, you really try to maximize passion and debate as you try to construct those parameters. I think one of the frustrating things for some of you doing this is having that guidance and saying, oh, how do I make these inclusion, exclusion? How do I construct this? What's the best way? And there often just isn't an objectively best way. These are tough subjective decisions and judgment calls to make. So Cynthia, as you continue searching and we have our next session, I want you to optimize your passion and debate in that space, with subject to the constraint of the Chinese institution, which is, I have to say, for me, is a new challenge to deal with.
David, I was going to ask you, is that like when you're thinking about quick papers and stuff like that, when you're looking for debates, do you pay attention quite closely to the news? Do you pay attention to, what policymakers are talking about, or do you draw on specific sources? Like, are you, for example, like a New York Times reader? Do you read The Economist, or do you, or where when you're thinking about, like, I know you've talked about studies that funding about studies and stuff like that. So like where when you're trying to get into.
That's a really, Matt, and sorry to cut you off. It's a really fantastic question. Let me just see if I'm going to try to share my screen again and say, one area that if you want like ready-made source of debate, let's go to New York Times and let's go to the opinion section, because guaranteed you'll find things here. So one thing here is, right, let's say I wanted to do a debate here. Okay. This is a podcast, so we won't get into that. As Ezra Klein, what America needs to learn. Suppose I wanted to do something really timely and debate, and I know somebody in this group like would fit with this immediately. And Mohammed, yes, I'm thinking of you because you do health security, to say, the health aftermath of Afghanistan or something, right? Mohammed is military in Nigeria. What is this going to mean for the health of women and children in Afghanistan, that the U.S. has jumped ship? I think we can all see that's a pretty high debate, a pretty important topic. Where did I get that topic? I just thought about Mohammed's interest and what's on the front op-ed of the New York Times. And guaranteed, if Mohammed writes that up, you'd probably get that in the Lancet as a commentary. Okay, so here, show me the data. Last systematic evidence. Here we go. There's something really nice here to say, look, we have up to the millisecond stock market information, but our health data are woefully out of date. It's like driving a car without a dashboard. We need to do something about that. So this is really interesting. So here's a research question. What is wrong with our surveillance systems? Right? Okay, fires in Greece. Here we've got something on, I'm sure the climate change folks are going to be looking at this. Some people who are doing natural experiments will look at these fires, because these rare events will create natural experiments we can study these fires and their impact on mental health. I'm thinking of Salma. When there's natural disasters, we need to have appropriate mental health responses. How do we deal with that? We're burying our kids in debt. I mean, all of these, you guys wouldn't have to think we're burying our kids in debt. Okay, debt financing public education. Well, maybe kids are so saddled with debt, they're in university, they don't have time to work out anymore. And maybe they can't pay for a gym because they're really struggling at the seams. I don't know, Susan, thinking about your topic in university students, physical education. So I just said this because, Matt, if you want a ready-made source for debates of high value, they're right here. This is like the low-hanging fruit. Now, I'm not saying bend over backwards to intersect with these, but you're probably gonna find this won't, right, Cynthia, I'm not seeing your topic here, but a lot of you guys could think of ways to intersect in a simplified way with what you're doing, right? Selma, if we wanted to look at the culture of debt and people getting in credit card debt and the mental health problems that creates, you could develop some fantastic studies looking at that. So Cornelia, you're interested in access. Well, you've got fires. People are going to be not going to be able to get to their doctor, right? That you're going to have some natural experiments around dental care that come from these kinds of disasters. Mohammed and Rehab, you're interested in early warning scores. Well, you can't do an early warning score if you don't have any data. And so maybe early warning scores have been constrained by we simply aren't putting the data collection systems we need in place to collect good, robust data. Rehab, and that would be also a nice commentary that might follow from your work down the road. Susan, I thought there was a comment. Somebody, Mohammed put in a chat. Okay, I'm behind you. Okay, Matt, does this help kind of answer?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just wondering where, I know obviously another part of finding debates is knowing your literature really well and knowing where the next question is coming from. But I was just wondering if there was, other places where you drew from.
Yeah, and just to say, so that's like the ready-made source of debate. Right. For your field, how do you do it? Right, the closest way to see what's the debate in your field is going to the best conferences in your field. And then you're going to see kind of what's hot. So, right, Cornelia, we talked about going to European Public Health Association. And those networks are really important because those guys are likely to be your reviewers. For Matt, that would be American Sociological Association. And we can kind of scan through, even without going, you can scan through the topics and see where people are, because that's research that's not yet published that's being submitted to the conference. So that'll get you the front end. And the other is, of course, your networks and academic networks. We're trying to help all of you connect to top people in your field. That connection with top people in the field will automatically put you at the forefront of ideas. And one of the reasons there's this big effect called the Matthew effect, where the students in the top programs stay at the top. Well, one of the reasons they do that is because their advisors are right in the middle of the best academic conversations. Well, you can kind of short circuit that, even if you're not at Harvard University. You can short circuit that and replicate for yourself, saying, okay, well, one of the big advantages these students have, they got connections, but they're also getting high value ideas. You can short circuit that yourself and make sure you're getting high value ideas. I'm spending a lot of emphasis on this because these high value ideas, this is where you have the most degrees of freedom. You have precious time and energy, and you've got to choose how you spend it very wisely. Like where are you going to invest your pearls? Where are you going to really devote your energy and make these choices? And that's why we do spend a fair bit of time trying to converge and get into this sweet spot for all of you. Matt, the other thing I'd say on it, news, I just stay on top of the news. I like global news because most of you really have global aspirations. Some of you really, I know some of you want to stay and focus on job market in South Africa. In that case, really be on top of what's going on in South Africa. And we want to catapult you to being a leader in South African debates. And by getting to be a leader in the debates and later on connecting with an NGO, this is often a strategy I do where many of you are passionate about the public good, connect you and what you're doing to an NGO, and it's going to empower you with impact. That's going to create impact, help you get access to data, help you get access to hypotheses. And I've had several research students be incredibly effective through a strategic alliance from the research, helping out an NGO, mutually beneficial. They got data and that NGO spread their work far and wide. And suddenly they found themselves making headlines in their country, in the UK in particular. But Selma, right, your papers I could see very nicely suited for you writing some op-eds to newspapers on the back of it, linking up to local South African NGOs that will really give it'll give wings to your research and work and catapult you to be a famous leader in the South African debate. If this all makes sense to all of you. Okay, Matt, kind of a long-winded answer to your question.
That was great. That was great. Thank you so much. I always like knowing where people are drawing drawing their research questions from. So
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think we've got this myth, like the genesis of like, Isaac Newton sitting on a tree, got hit in the head with an apple. And it's just not the reality. If you studied any intellectual history, right, that these ideas have a genesis, they have origins, and this is often a lot of it. Isaac Newton's ideas, where he was in competition with others to invent calculus, right? One of my favorite phrases of him, standing on the shoulders of giants, he was actually ribbing his competitor who was well known to be a dwarf. So it was a backhanded dig at his competitor. If I have seen far, it's because I stood on the shoulder of giants. It's like the guy he was really talking to was a dwarf. It was really cheeky.
That's great.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, Susan. I know, Mohammed, you and Susan have hands up. I digressed a little bit. Yes, please jump in.
Yeah, I was wondering, I like the New York Times, but they limit articles. Do you think that, since I never thought about searching them, do you think it's worth subscribing to the paper just for me to keep informed by reading the articles? I'm just curious what you think. Or just looking at the articles, I think would be enough.
No, I mean, it's not an expensive subscription. It doesn't have to be New York Times. Actually, if I was going to subscribe to one, I would go to debates I completely disagree with. Right, and that would probably be Wall Street Journal, which tends to be, I don't know where your politics are, but they're extremely conservative in their op-eds. And New York Times tends to be very liberal in their op-eds. Op-eds tend to be that more polarized space. Intentionally. And I like to look at op-eds intentionally that I don't agree with. That really lights a fire under you. So I wouldn't necessarily say New York Times. But anywhere, even in Jamaica, Susan, you in the local papers, you'll get a sense of some of these debates too, and it doesn't have to be a high cost thing. And your university should have a subscription, so I think you can get access to these papers simply through the university library. Now I know where you're at in West Indies, that hasn't always been a straightforward process, but do check with the research librarian. Mohammed, you got your hand up as well. Oh, wait, Mohammed, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I was going to say I was about to thank Matt for bringing this up first, because it was actually something I thought of, how to assess whether issues are topical and the scope of it being a debate or not. Is it a national debate, a global debate? And it got me thinking, because we have a very, very big debate now, probably the biggest we've had, or I have seen since I joined the medical practice for over a decade now. We are having a mass exodus of healthcare workers, especially doctors from the country. And there is, in fact, there was a recruitment event where Saudi Arabia government came, and they were recruiting doctors, and the government just came and then chased the doctors out of the venue. So it's actually a very, very topical issue now.
Yeah.
And a commentary about it would be very, very nice. Though I think I had it in one of your presentations, it's not going to be, it might not break into any top tier journal, because it might only be relevant to Nigeria or at best sub-Saharan Africa. But I think it's a very, very big issue. And borrowing from, I think, that concept you gave us, we are all going to hell. I mean, is it, damn it, you're all going to hell, but there's a solution.
Yeah.
The damn it, we are all going to hell is that in Nigeria, we can't compete, or in sub-Saharan Africa, we can't compete with how much doctors are being paid elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it's almost inevitable. The doctors are going to.
Yeah, Mohammed, look, you're tapping into this huge debate. I think you can, with some tweaks, remember, you said this is small discussion, but actually, again, when we talk about a few tweaks, you said it made it sound like this debate is low. I actually think you can take that topic and maybe you think here you've got a lot of passion, but you can kind of shift more into this space with some tweaks on that debate, situating it as this is an expression of this big global problem of brain drain, of of doctors and nurses. So, you're like, this huge problem in COVID is accelerating, and nowhere is this clearer than the tension between Nigeria and South Africa. So what you can do is, again, I talk about these techniques, and this is especially important on a commentary, to kind of grab your readers and hook in to the global problem and situate this local manifestation of the bigger global problem can help you plug in. And that's going to answer the question, well, these US, UK journals, why do they care about what's going on in Nigeria? Now, there's also value in this as well, for your position and institutionally where you're at, of making you a leading voice in this conversation in Nigeria as well. So don't lose sight of that. Guys, we're running out of time here. I just want to say, I hope you found this session helpful. I wanted to do the writing session, but many of you coming into this cohort are still grappling with your topic and maybe feeling a little uncertain and unsure if you've honed in on a good topic. I wanted to just equip you with these extra tools that in our one-to-one sessions, we haven't had the full time, detail, and scope to get into in depth. Do send me questions afterwards, and we are going to be in touch in the DMs following up on this. If some of you, just even just looking at that last New York Times op-ed page, some of those are some really cool papers. So if any of you guys, I don't want to take away from your one, but just in a few minutes looking at an op-ed page with several of you, we could come up with some really high impact pieces that we could do. If any of you do want to take that on, let me know. File that in your ideas filing cabinet somewhere, and we can also add to our roadmap and think where and when that might be appropriate to factor something like that in.